The notification sound woke me up before the alarm. It was 5:40 in the morning. I was still in my nightgown, sitting on the edge of the bed, my body aching from the day before. I opened my phone, an email from Olivia. No subject. The body of the message had just one sentence. Mom, we've decided to keep the ceremony intimate. Please watch the live stream. We'll send you the link. My heart stopped. I read it again. 3 times. It wasn't a mistake. There was no, I'm sorry, no, I love you. Just that. A command. An exclusion disguised as kindness. Outside, the sun hadn't even risen yet, but something inside me was already starting to die. I sat motionless, the phone screen still glowing. I had helped her choose the dress, helped with the down payment for the venue. I paid for the caterer and the DJ. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. And was I just a spectator? A dog barked down the street. The kettle started whistling in the kitchen, but I didn't move. An email, 1 sentence, and a deafening silence from the woman I carried for 9 months and supported for 30 years. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But inside me, something turned to dust. I replied with 4 words. I understand. Enjoy. I closed the phone. The kettle kept whistling, and in that moment, alone in my cold kitchen, I knew. This wasn't just a refusal. It was a message. And now, the one who had something to say was me. My name is Helen Miller. I'm 58 years old and I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I've worked as an administrative assistant at a public school for 29 years. I've never missed a single day, never complained. I never had time for it. I've been a widow since I was 39. My husband, Robert, died of a heart attack driving home on a rainy night. I remember the sound of the police knocking on my door like it was yesterday. I was left with 2 small children and a mortgage. Olivia was 8, Daniel 5. I had to choose. Either I sink or I become steel. I became steel. I'd wake up at 5, drop them at school, rush to work, take the crowded city bus, come back, make dinner, give them baths, check their homework, put them to bed, and only then I'd cry in the bathroom with the faucet running. No one ever saw. To the world, I was the strong woman, the hard-working mother. But inside, all I wanted was to rest. Olivia was always the brilliant one. Studious, determined, charming. She had a talent for everything. Daniel was quieter, more reserved. Slowly, my life began to shape itself around hers. I turned down promotions so I wouldn't have to work late. I sold my car when she wanted to study abroad. I sold cosmetics on the side just to make extra money when she got into college. I never regretted it. But what I didn't realize is that the more I disappeared, the more she forgot to see me. After Olivia graduated and got a job in New York City, our meetings turned into quick phone calls. Then, cold text messages. Then, almost nothing. The last time she came home was for her father's birthday. I made lasagna, bought a chocolate cake, tidied up the house. She arrived late, picked at her food, and left, saying she had a deadline. She left an expensive bottle of perfume on the bathroom sink. I wore it for months. It was the only way to feel like she still passed through here. When she announced her engagement to Ethan, I was thrilled. I thought, maybe now she'll come back. Maybe now she'll realize. I started helping where I could. I contributed to the dress, the decorations, part of the videography. I never asked for recognition. I just wanted to be there, to see my daughter at the altar, to hold her hand, look her in the eyes and say, "You did it." But today, after that email, for the first time, I understood that I may have raised a wonderful woman for the world. But for me, all that was left was silence, and a feeling that grows with every minute. I'm done. If this story has already gripped you in the first few minutes, imagine what's still to come. Here, you'll find real stories that touch, challenge, and transform. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. I wanted her to remember, to close her eyes, go back a few years, and see the woman who slept sitting up in a plastic chair at the emergency room, waiting for a fever to break. I wanted her to see the woman who went without a new winter coat for 3 years because Olivia needed a better laptop for college. I wanted to be remembered as more than just an account number, not just as the woman who signs checks. My wish was so simple, It's almost ridiculous. I wanted to be present. That's all. Present at the most important moment of her life. She knew I didn't care about luxury. I didn't care about expensive flowers or gilded party favors with our initials. I just wanted to be sitting there, in a dress that made me feel pretty, with low heels maybe, a little lipstick, and when she walked down the aisle, I wanted our eyes to meet, for her to smile, for her to say with that smile, "You made this possible, Mom." That was all. But what I received was the opposite, an invitation to remove myself. The ceremony would be small, she said, just for the inner circle. And so I wasn't in the inner circle. I wasn't close. I wasn't essential. I had become just another person. And that's when reality hit me like a cold wind. I realized that for years, while I sacrificed for her, I never demanded presence. I never demanded reciprocity. Everything was on autopilot. She called when she needed something, disappeared when everything was fine, and I let her. Because she was my daughter. Because I thought a mother's love meant accepting everything, until she sent me that email. And with it, unknowingly, she gave me the permission I had never given myself, to stop trying. But before I stopped, before I let go of the rope completely, I wanted her to see. I wanted her to feel what it's like to be on the outside, because it's one thing to be forgotten by distraction. It's another to be excluded by decision. And there, sitting in my kitchen, with the cold morning light filtering through the crooked blinds, I understood something that hurt more than anything else. I was never invited to this wedding. I was summoned as a sponsor. But as a mother, as the woman who gave everything, as a person, I was discarded. And that wasn't just a mistake. It was a reflection. Olivia had gotten used to seeing me as a utility, and I had let her. So, my wish was no longer to be there. It was to make her see what my absence meant. I wanted her to feel what it's like to plan an entire wedding, counting on help that won't come. I wanted her to feel what it's like to look at the altar and know that the one person who never failed to show up now isn't there. I wanted her to understand that love, when it's one-sided, becomes exploitation, and that even the most dedicated woman gets tired. I wanted dignity. It wasn't pride. It was respect. The kind of respect you don't demand with shouts. You earn it with silence. And mine was just beginning. The next morning, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I put on my usual beige blouse, tied my hair in a loose bun, made a coffee that was too bitter, and caught the 6:40 a.m. bus. Outside, the world went on as usual. Inside me, it did not. On the way to school, I avoided thinking too much. I was on autopilot. I pretended there wasn't an emotional bomb about to explode inside my chest. But when I walked into the staff room, I realized I was colder than usual. The air conditioning was on full blast, but the chill came from within. I sat at my desk, opened my record book, pretended to grade papers. By the third page, my pen was shaking, and before I knew it, a tear fell onto the paper. "Helen," I heard David, my colleague, ask, "Are you okay?" I nodded quickly without looking up. "Just a headache." He didn't press, but the truth was different. My head wouldn't stop. It repeated the phrase like a cruel mantra. Watch the live stream. Around noon, I got a call from the bank. "Ms. Miller, good morning. This is Patricia, your account manager at the downtown branch. Is everything all right?" My heart sped up. "Yes. How can I help you?" "We have a scheduled transfer here for the amount of $40,000 to the account of Grand Events LLC. Do you confirm?" It took me a second to understand. That was the second deposit. The final part of the contract Olivia had asked me to help pay. It was to cover the catering, decorations, sound, and lighting. I took a deep breath. "What day is it scheduled for?" "For tomorrow, the 23rd, at noon. But since the amount is significant, we're calling ahead to confirm if you wish to maintain or cancel it." I closed my eyes. In a folder in my drawer was the printed contract. I remember Olivia handing it to me, like someone placing a fast food order, without looking me in the eye. Without saying thank you, she just said, "I need this part paid by Friday." And now, there I was, 2 clicks away from confirming or canceling everything. The bank employee waited. "Ms. Miller?" "Yes, I'm sorry. Please cancel it." There was a pause. "You confirm the cancellation?" "I confirm. You can proceed." "Understood." Would you like a receipt? No, thank you. I hung up, and the silence that followed was liberating. There was no triumphant music, no victorious smile. But in that exact moment, I realized something. I had started to exist again. I went home feeling lighter. I opened the living room window. The afternoon air came in with the smell of rain. I made some tea. I sat there, in the brown armchair, with the cup in my hand and a blanket over my feet. And then, the calls began. First, it was Olivia. Then, Ethan. Then, a woman from the event planning agency. They all wanted to know what had happened with the payment. No one asked if I was okay, or if I wanted to talk. They only wanted to know about the money. I put my phone on airplane mode. The next morning, I went to school as usual. No one suspected that inside, I was in a state of war. But this time, I was the army. At the end of the day, David offered me a ride. Are you really okay, Helen? I hesitated. I am. I'm just tired of being ignored. He didn't understand, but he smiled and said, Well, I'm here if you need anything. I thanked him. When I got home, there was a note taped to the gate. Mom, call me. It's urgent. I ignored it. I picked up my phone and opened my email. There it was, a new message from Olivia. We need to talk. This is serious now. And I thought, now it's serious? Now? Now that the tap has run dry? I closed the tab, and that night, I slept without sleeping pills for the first time in months. The following Saturday, at 10 a.m. sharp, the intercom buzzed. Ms. Miller, there's a young woman downstairs. Says she's your daughter, Olivia. It took less time than I expected. I buzzed the gate open. Her face was red, hair hastily tied back, makeup smudged. She held her phone in one hand, her purse in the other. Her heels seemed too high for her haste. Mom, we need to talk, she said, walking in without asking permission. I closed the door behind her, in silence. She went straight to the living room, looked around as if to make sure we were alone. What happened? Why did you cancel the transfer? I sat on the sofa, slowly. Because I'm not going to the wedding. Her eyes widened. And so you decided to sabotage it? I smiled, but not with joy. I didn't sabotage anything. I just stopped financing an event from which I was excluded. She scoffed. Mom, it's not like that. You know it was a difficult decision. That Ethan's family has restrictions. That the guest list was limited. And your fiancé couldn't limit something other than his own mother? She fell silent. I paid for most of this party. You asked me for help with the dress, the photographer, the videographer, and I paid, without question. Now, when it's time to celebrate, I'm not good enough to sit in a chair? Mom, she tried to interrupt. No, Olivia, let me finish, because for the first time in years, I want to speak until I'm done. She looked down, but didn't reply. I spent hours in that kitchen making food for you and Ethan. I gave up my only vacation days to look after your apartment while you traveled. I gave everything, and all I got was a live stream link. You're being dramatic. No, I'm finally recognizing who I was, and who I became because of you. She crossed her arms. She was impatient, as if she had more important things to deal with. The wedding is next week. Without that money, we'll lose the caterer. The florist has already threatened to cancel, and the decorators. The wedding is your problem now, Olivia. Mom, you're being selfish. That was the word. Selfish. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Selfish. Because I stopped being exploited? She stood up, paced in circles. You don't understand. Ethan's family is traditional. They have standards, and they wanted a small ceremony without too many embarrassing relatives. And I'm embarrassing? Her silence was crueler than any answer. I took a deep breath. Get out of my house. She stopped. What? You heard me. Leave. Mom, you're overreacting. This isn't what? Reality? The truth? Pain? I stood up slowly. The room seemed to spin. You don't want me at your ceremony, Olivia. You don't want me near your in-laws. You don't want me in the photos. But you want my money. She turned pale. I just wanted everything to be perfect. Well, now it will be perfect without me. She slowly picked up her purse, walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned around. This will have consequences. "It already has," I replied. I woke up, and I closed the door. She didn't knock. She left slowly, as if processing. I stood in the middle of the living room. The clock ticked, as if mocking the time I'd lost trying to please. And on the floor, next to the sofa, I saw something that broke me. A cup of cold coffee. I hadn't changed that cup in 3 days. That's what my life was like. Cold. Forgotten. But now, it was going to be different. I closed the door firmly, but not with anger. I closed it like someone burying something. My steps to the bedroom were heavy, as if every memory of the conversation was pulling me down. I sat on the edge of the bed, took off my shoes, let down my hair. I looked at myself in the wardrobe mirror. It was a woman I barely recognized. Gray hairs that I used to hide with expired dye. Deep, dark circles. A tired face. I asked myself, when did I disappear? For how long did I erase myself to fit into other people's lives? Slowly, I took off my blouse, put on my old pajamas with a faded floral print, the same ones I wore at the hospital years ago when Olivia had her appendix removed. I used to sleep sitting in the reception armchair in these pajamas with a coat over them. I remembered every night, every whispered prayer in silence, every time I set my plate aside so she could have more, every pair of shoes I didn't buy because she needed a new one. I felt a tightness in my chest, but I didn't cry. Not anymore. I got up, went to the desk drawer, took out a wooden box. Inside were all the receipts, invoices, bank statements, everything I had paid for the wedding, every cent, every effort, $32,700. Nearly 4 years of savings were in there. I was still planning to send another $40,000, the amount that, days ago, I had canceled with the bank manager. At the bottom of the box, there was a note. One of the few handwritten by Olivia. "Thanks for always being here, Mom. I love you." It was from her graduation, the day she got into the state university. I had been ecstatic, and she still seemed like my daughter back then. I stared at the paper for several minutes. Then I put everything back, and I understood what hurt so much. It wasn't the money. It was the disposal. It was having become invisible. It was knowing that, to the person I loved most in this world, I had become an inconvenience. A note out of tune. She didn't want me at the wedding because I didn't fit the scenery. I clashed with the aesthetic. With the narrative, she wanted to show her in-laws, her friends, her Instagram. And I, a simple woman who takes the bus, who still saves grocery bags in the cupboard, was a portrait she wanted to hide. I was the before, and she only wanted to show the after. I lay down. The ceiling fan spun, making a low, rhythmic noise. I closed my eyes and let my thoughts run. I remembered her birth, her first day of school, the time she fell off her bike and cried in my arms. I remembered the birthdays I spent alone, waiting for a call. I remembered the Christmas she spent in another state and sent a 7-second voice message. I remembered when I got sick with a suspected tumor, and she only asked, "Do you need anything?" without even turning on her camera. Everything had accumulated like sheets of ice, and now it was breaking. But in place of despair, there was something new, something unexpected. Clarity. I was waking up from a trance that had lasted for decades. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee. I took a piece of paper and a pen, and I wrote 3 pages. They weren't for her. They were for me, listing everything I gave up, everything I swallowed in silence. I wrote until my hand ached. After I finished, I took a deep breath. And then I asked myself, now what? Now that she knows she won't get the money, that I know the truth, that the wound is open, what am I going to do? And the answer came with force. Nothing. I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to ask for apologies or justifications or reconciliation. Because in that silence after the door closed, I understood that my pain wasn't a tragedy. It was a liberation. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed presence. And the only person I needed to see me was myself. I stood up, looked out the window, the sky still gray, the day dawning slowly. The phone rang. I looked at the screen. Daniel. I answered. Mom, is everything okay? I was silent. Olivia is freaking out. The venue people called saying the payment was canceled, Ethan is a wreck. I know. You're not going to send the money? No. Why? I took a deep breath. Because I saw myself, son. For the first time in a long time. You're scaring me, Mom. I'm saving myself, Daniel. You're not going to the wedding? I wasn't invited. I was replaced by a link. He didn't answer. Do you want to talk? Want me to come over? I just want you to understand one thing. What? I haven't stopped loving her. I've just stopped selling myself cheap. I hung up before he could say anything else. I leaned against the wall, and for the first time in many years, I felt whole. On Monday, I woke up before the alarm. No chest pain, no weight on my shoulders, no need to take the 2 pills that accompanied me every morning. I got up, put water on to boil. Strong coffee as always, but this time, no sugar. I grabbed my purse, straightened the white button-down shirt I rarely wore, and walked to the bank branch, 3 blocks from home. The manager was a young, polite man who always called me Ms. Miller with forced respect. How can I help you today? He asked, smiling. I want to open a separate account. An account for me. Just me. Certainly, we can do that right now. As he typed in my details, I felt something different in my chest. It was as if I was reclaiming my own name. For years, my money was an extension of others' desires. Now, for the first time, it was just mine. I signed the papers calmly. My tone of voice changed. I used words I hadn't used in a long time. Like, no, just me, private. On the way out, the sky was blue, clear. The kind of blue that usually goes unnoticed when you walk with your head down too much. On the same sidewalk, I saw a woman pushing a stroller. She was tired, but determined. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for no longer being that woman. I stopped at the pharmacy, bought hair dye, red nail polish, a light foundation. I got home and left everything on the table. I still didn't know if I would use them, but just the act of buying them was a gesture. The afternoon was quiet, and then at 5:02 p.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't Olivia, not Ethan, not Daniel. It was a courier. Delivery for Helen Miller, I signed. It was a thick white envelope, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a printed letter from the wedding planning company. It summarized the current situation: late payment, canceling vendors, lost reservations, deadline approaching. And at the end, a line written by hand. Please reconsider. Your daughter needs you. I put the envelope in a drawer, without replying. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I turned off my phone and went for a walk. I walked down the back street, the one I used to avoid out of shame for the potholes and rundown houses. But now, I owed nothing to anyone. I went to the bakery, bought a slice of carrot cake with chocolate frosting. I ate it alone, on the sidewalk, watching the cars go by. No one asked me for anything. No one demanded anything from me. It was as if the world was letting me exist in peace for a few minutes. The next day, I went back to work. David once again offered me a ride. You look different, Helen, he said. More serene. I'm learning to breathe my own air, David. He smiled, confused. At lunchtime, he invited me for coffee. I accepted. We talked about trivial things. Students, the noise at school, the shortage of teachers. But in the back of my mind, I knew the game had changed, and no one knew it yet. Because my strength was never about shouting. It was about enduring, and now, about deciding. Later, I received a message from Olivia. Mom, don't do this to us. It's just a misunderstanding. I didn't reply. 2 hours later, another. I'll talk to Ethan. We can talk. But please send the money. We can't lose everything over this. And then came the most honest one. Are you really willing to let everything fall apart? I took a deep breath. And for the first time, I thought with clarity. It wasn't me who was letting anything fall apart. It was she who had removed the foundation and was now scared of the fall. And me? I was standing, firm, and silently ready for the next step. The next morning, I made a weaker coffee. I added a pinch of cinnamon, like I used to when Daniel was little. While the water boiled, I opened a hardcover notebook I'd been given years ago, but never used. On the first page, I wrote in large letters, everything I do for myself, and I started a list. It was a strange exercise. For the first time, instead of jotting down shopping lists, reminders, or bills to pay, I wrote small things, and they were all for me. Color my hair, change the bedroom curtains, buy a new book, schedule a routine checkup, relearn how to cook for one. It didn't feel like a revolution, but it was. For decades, everything I did had a name and a surname attached. Every dish I prepared, every hour of overtime, every medicine kept in my purse, it was always for someone else. Now, I was turning that page. Literally. At school, I started talking less and listening more. Not out of shyness, but out of strategy. David offered me a ride for the third time that week, and for the first time, I accepted with ease. "Doing anything special today?" he asked as we drove. "Maybe," I replied, "or maybe just resting without having to explain it." He laughed, and I realized he had a nice laugh. During the ride, my phone vibrated in my lap. Messages from Olivia. "Ethan is furious. His mother said this is a humiliation. You could at least answer. If you make the deposit by tomorrow, there's still time to save the catering. Don't do this to us." I read them all, one by one, and left them there. No blue ticks, no reply. That night, when I got home, I organized my documents. I put the wedding payment receipts in one envelope. In another, I placed the deed to the apartment I was still paying for. The contract was in my name. It always had been. I looked at the deed like someone surveying a territory. Slowly, I began to understand. My entire life had been my responsibility. No one gave me anything, and if, for a while, I had forgotten that, now I remembered. I remembered so clearly that I decided to go further. I opened my laptop. I searched for small lodges in quiet towns. I found one in the mountains of Pennsylvania, a place surrounded by trees and silence. I made a reservation for 3 days, paid in advance. I closed the tab, smiled. I took the hair dye, went to the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. The face was still the same, tired, but firm. I started applying the color. Every brush stroke was a silent message. I'm still here. The next day, I arrived at school with slightly auburn hair. Nothing scandalous, but enough to break the pattern. David noticed. "New look? New outlook." He laughed, but with respect. The messages from Olivia stopped for a few hours, but they returned that evening. They said that without the payment, they'll sue for breach of contract. "Do you want me to be humiliated at my own wedding? Please, Mom, do this for me." That's what hurt the most. The "for me" always came after the "against me." But this time, it was no longer my responsibility to save her. She needed to fall. She needed to see what lay beneath the structure she had built on top of me. And me? I was finally stepping out from the foundation. On Saturday, I went to a fabric store. I bought 2 new curtains. I chose floral patterns, something I had never done. I always opted for neutral tones, to not draw attention. This time, I wanted color. I struggled to hang the curtains. I got a stool, drilled into the wall, and installed the rod by myself. Every hammer blow was an affirmation. When I finished, I stood there, looking. The room was different, lit in a new way, more mine. I took my notebook and crossed another item off the list. It was the first time something in my house had changed without it being for someone else. On Tuesday, a notification on my phone made me stop what I was doing. It was an email from the catering company. "Dear Ms. Miller, we have tried to contact your daughter with no response. We are writing to inform you that without the pending payment by 5 p.m. today, we will not be able to hold the reservation for the event. Thank you for your understanding." I felt a pang in my chest, but it passed quickly. Guilt knocked. But this time, it wasn't let in. It was life teaching a lesson. And I was, for the first time, allowing her to learn it without me grading the test. That night, the intercom buzzed. Again. This time, I didn't answer. I lay in bed. The fan spinning, the house silent. The world could be in crisis, but inside me, there was peace. And peace cannot be bought with blackmail. The dawn found me awake, as if my body knew the day would be decisive. I sat at the kitchen table, covered with a light blue tablecloth, and stayed silent. My eyes traced the lines of the house. So quiet, so mine. At 7:15 a.m., I picked up my phone and blocked calls from Olivia and Ethan. It wasn't anger. It was protection. Everything that came after the block was someone else's emotion trying to pull me back in. I got in the car. I turned the radio on low, just the soft sounds of a piano and distant rain. No expectations, no urgency, just the pleasure of a peaceful drive. I hit the highway at 7:55 a.m. The cool breeze hit my face. The sun was rising between faraway storm clouds. A gentle shiver ran through me. I was about to break free from the invisible net that had held me captive by fear. At 9:30 a.m., I arrived at the Mountain Lodge, a simple but welcoming building. The owner, a woman who spoke slowly, greeted me with a smile she didn't have to force. I gave her my name. She said they were expecting me. I entered the cabin, a neatly made bed, curtains open to the gray forest, the scent of a distant wood fire. I placed my bag on the floor, breathing slowly. I looked around, noticing a wooden table with a note. For room 3, enjoy your time. I thought of that sentence Olivia had written years ago. Thanks for always being here, Mom. Now it would feel empty. I had emptied myself to be filled with others' expectations, and I had forgotten to be Helen. I took my pajamas from my suitcase and changed into a soft, olive green t-shirt I'd bought recently. I removed the simple earrings I wore to work, a gift from a friend. I put on a larger pair, just for myself. The bathroom mirror showed a different woman, hair colored with the shade I chose, skin a little more vibrant. Her gaze sought serenity. It was the first time in years I had seen myself without guilt. I decided to explore. I walked along a short trail. The ground was damp with rain, the moss slippery. The air was clean, free of emails, demands, expectations, just presence, just me. I reached a lookout point. The landscape unfolded with tall trees, like old photographs. I sat on a wooden bench, breathing deeply. That view was my first reward, a gift I gave myself. I returned to the cabin where a kettle was ready to boil. I went to the porch and made a chamomile and honey tea. I left the steaming mug on the small table, surrounded by the watchful smoke of incense. And I sat. As the steam rose, I closed my eyes. I thought about what I had left behind. The empty house, the floral curtains I had installed myself, the kitchen stool with the cold coffee. I thought about my silence making decisions. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Resist. I shouldn't look. I stayed there, in peace. I had lunch, hot soup and homemade bread. I ate slowly, savoring every spoonful. It was the first meal I hadn't had to prepare for anyone else. It was mine. In the afternoon, I wrote in the journal I had brought, "Today I see myself. Today I hear myself. Today I find myself again." I noted details no one needed to read. The feel of the wind, the smell of wood, the distant sound of birds. It was all mine. I received WhatsApp messages. They were from the wedding planner, from Ethan's family, from the store confirming a cancellation, all asking for some form of cooperation. I just silenced them. I didn't need to reply. At 6:10 p.m., I climbed onto a small, improvised bunk in the cabin to watch the sunset. The sky was streaked with orange and gray. A private spectacle. Unique. Worthy only of me. And there, as the day closed, I felt it. I am whole. No longer an extension of someone else. No longer invisible. No longer for sale. For the first time in a long time, I smiled a real smile. There was no applause. No invitations to come back. Just a woman who existed for herself. And the certainty that silent erosions can give way to firm reconstructions. I closed my eyes, letting the silence descend like a light blanket. And I thought, the next scene would not be about me. It would be about her. While I was breathing clean air in the cabin, the world on the other side of the mountain was silently crumbling. At 9:15 that morning, Olivia arrived at the wedding venue with swollen eyes, a wrinkled dress, and a face paler than makeup could hide. The florists didn't show up. The caterer demanded payment by 10 a.m., or they would cancel everything. Ethan's mother was speaking loudly, with that passive-aggressive tone of someone who always knew this would be a problem. The decorator called to say he wouldn't lift a finger without the remaining balance. The sound company didn't answer their calls either. The wedding planner, flustered, asked, "Is there any way you can resolve this now?" She shook her head, mute. Ethan tried to argue. He talked about bad credit, lawsuits, and disrespecting family tradition. She wasn't listening anymore. The only thing echoing in Olivia's mind was the silence of my reply, or rather, the absence of it. The wedding was scheduled for noon. By 10:30 a.m., there was no food, no flowers, and no music. Her dress was there, but she wasn't present. The bridesmaids whispered. Her mother-in-law gestured. The closest guests began to suspect something was wrong. That's when Daniel arrived, his face tense. "She's not coming," he said bluntly. "Mom isn't coming, Olivia." She didn't answer. "And you know what?" he continued. "I get it. Are you on her side now? It's not about sides. It's about seeing. She's just had enough." Olivia cried for the first time that day. Not for the flowers, not for the catering, not for the humiliation, but for finally realizing what had always been there, which she had ignored. My absence was the one gift she never expected, and it was in everything. In the empty altar, in the chair that would have been mine, in the lack of a hug before she walked down the aisle, in the lack of a look that said, "You did it." In the absence of that voice she had learned to ignore, but now desperately missed. The voice that said, "I'm here, honey," but I wasn't, and this time, it was final. At 11:45 a.m., the wedding planner entered the makeshift dressing room. He was visibly uncomfortable. "We need to make a decision. We either postpone or we do something symbolic with what we have." Olivia sat there, staring at the folded veil in her lap. "What if we just have the ceremony with the people who are here?" Ethan asked, trying to salvage what was left. "The ceremony maybe, the reception, there's no way." She nodded, but deep in her heart she knew. The wedding was already undone before it began. Because you don't start a new life by building it on the contempt for the one who raised you. The improvised ceremony lasted 28 minutes. There were photos, forced smiles, quick vows, but in every image, in every gesture, the emptiness spoke louder. Ethan's mother remained impassive. The guests offered obligatory congratulations, and at the end, as everyone dispersed, Olivia took out her phone and opened the email she had sent me days before. She read it and felt disgusted by the curt tone, the coldness, the arrogance. She wrote a new one, over 1,000 words. She recounted memories. She apologized. She justified. She tried to explain. At the end, she wrote, "I love you, Mom, even if it's too late now." And she clicked send. Meanwhile, I was watching the leaves sway gently outside my window. There was something sweet in the air, the smell of freshly baked bread. The lodge offered afternoon tea. I sat on the porch with a slice of cornbread and a cup of tea. I took out my phone to take a picture of the view. It was beautiful. That's when I saw the notification. "You have one new message from Olivia Miller." I paused for a second. Should I open it? No, I just archived it. I put my phone away, took a sip of tea. The sun warmed my face. I smiled. For the first time, an apology wasn't necessary, because I didn't want an apology. I wanted awareness, and that she now had. On the way back to the cabin, I saw 2 elderly ladies sitting on a bench, chatting. One of them wore a colorful scarf in her hair. She smiled at me. "First time here?" "First of many," I replied. Her smile widened. That evening, I drew a hot bath. I lit a candle I'd brought from home, scented with lavender. As the water filled the tub, I thought about everything I'd left behind. I thought of Ethan, his arrogance. I thought of his mother, that woman who never looked me in the eye. I thought of Daniel, and how he realized something was wrong before his sister did. And I thought of myself, bare, fragile, firm. I stepped into the tub. The hot water enveloped my body like a hug. I closed my eyes. In the darkness of my eyelids, I saw the empty altar, the chair where I would have been, and I saw myself, absent, not out of revenge, but out of respect. For the first time, a mother's absence had more power than all her presence combined. For a long time, I confused love with sacrifice. I believed being a mother meant giving everything of yourself, even when no one asked, even when no one thanked you. I thought that if I gave enough of myself, I would become indispensable. That recognition would come with time, but time only took. It took my days, my nights, my birthdays. It took my body, my savings, my silence. And when I realized it, I was no longer there. I was a useful presence, a resource, a repository of love that others withdrew from when they needed it and forgot about when they had what they wanted. For a long time, I carried guilt for thinking of myself. I felt selfish when I said no. I felt ungrateful when I wanted to rest. But that email, that request to watch the ceremony on a live stream, woke me from a deep sleep. I wasn't a guest. I was tolerated. And that, for me, was the end. In absence, I found presence. In silence, I found my voice. And in rejection, I found my boundaries. Today, I understand that love is also about setting boundaries. It's about teaching, even our children, that no one has the right to erase us. Not out of shame, not out of habit, not out of convenience. Being a mother doesn't make me less of a woman, and a whole woman does not accept being half of anyone else. I didn't become cruel. I just stopped being invisible. I learned to look in the mirror without apologizing. I learned that forgiveness isn't about going back. It's about letting go. And that not all reconciliations need to happen. Some pains don't need to be healed, just acknowledged. Today I walk with a lighter step, not because the world has changed, but because I have changed my place within it. I moved out from the back of the room. I stepped onto the stage of my own life. And for the first time, I am writing the story with my name on the cover. I returned home 3 days after the ceremony. The gate still had smudges from anxious hands, as if someone had knocked there more than once. In the mailbox, a white envelope with my name handwritten on it. It was from Olivia. I opened it, sat on the sofa with the new curtains swaying behind me, and began to read. It was a long letter, written with anger, with hurt, with desperation, and maybe, just maybe, with a little regret too. She said she felt abandoned, that everything went wrong, that the wedding was a disaster. She said I had overreacted, that I didn't need to do what I did. Then, the tone of the handwriting changed. She remembered when I used to make her coffee before exams, when I wore the fan t-shirt at her graduation, when I waited outside the theater in the rain because there were no more tickets. You were always there, she wrote. At the end, she apologized and asked, "Is there still time to fix this?" I put the letter in a wooden box, the same one where the receipts for the payments I made for her were kept. I didn't reply, because some answers, life delivers in other ways. Daniel called me days later. He said Olivia was down, that Ethan had become cold, that the mother-in-law disappeared after the fiasco. They didn't come back from their honeymoon the same. They came back different, more distant, and I was at peace. The following week, I started a sewing class, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I met women like me, quiet, resilient, full of stories and patches. I bought a used sewing machine. I set it up in the living room, the same room where I used to feel so alone. Now there was color. There was the sound of thread being pulled. There was creation. And above all, there was me. I received flowers on my birthday. The card was signed, "With love, Olivia." I kept it, but I didn't reply. Daniel's wife, Nicole, invited me for dinner. I went. I brought homemade cheese bread. She cried when she hugged me. "You didn't deserve any of that." I smiled, not because I wanted to hear it, but because, this time, she meant it. Today, I wake up without an alarm. I read on the porch sofa. I cook for myself. And when there are leftover fabric scraps from my sewing, I put them in a vase on the table, as if I were a guest. Because now, I welcome myself with kindness. I don't know if I will ever be close to my daughter again, but I know that she, wherever she is, sees me. And seeing is the beginning of everything. For a long time, I thought love was about giving everything. Giving your time, your money, your body, your health, your dreams. And when all of that ran out, I still found a way to give a little more. I thought loving meant erasing yourself, that the more I sacrificed, the more I would be valued. But I wasn't. Until the day I was asked to watch my daughter's wedding through a computer screen. And there, in that cold email, in that heartless gesture, I realized If you disappear so much for someone that you are no longer seen, it's not love. It's oblivion. And if your love has to humiliate itself to be accepted, it's not healing anyone. It's making you sick. Today, I look back and I don't see a bitter woman. I see someone who learned that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it's respect. That stopping to save others is also a way of saving yourself. And that someone who truly loves you would never ask you to erase yourself. If this story touched a part of you that has been silent, I want to ask you one thing. Comment below. I also learned to say enough, because your enough might be the beginning of someone else's reunion with themselves. And share this story with a woman you love, a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, or yourself. Sometimes, all we need is to remember that we weren't born to be a shadow, but to live fully, and to never again watch life through someone else's screen.